This is Lucas Ryder, executive producer and co-author of episode 715, Gordon Kemp. You're listening to The Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
Well, it's good to know that Aaron and I are on the same side. Welcome back to the award-winning The Blacklist Exposed podcast. I'm Agent Troy Heinrichs.
And I'm Agent Aaron Peterson. And don't forget to tell your friends about this show by text or tweet or whatever. Thanks for joining us yet again for number 158 on The Blacklist, Gordon Kemp, written by Jonathan Shapiro and Lucas Reeder, and directed by Jonathan Switcher. Sorry, I got that wrong. Directed by Andrew McCarthy. Show notes and other intel for this episode of The Blacklist Exposed can be found at theblacklistexposed.com.
Well, if you're new to the podcast, coming back after a long time away, we basically keep doing it the same way we've been doing it since season 2. That's right. We do a profiling question first, and then we get into the case profile, talking about all things gun control, and then we will move into Red's rhetoric. Here's some great stories and lines from him before moving on to our thoughts on Brian Dennehy's passing this week. So sad. So sad. But we had our profiling question from last week. Does wrestler's brother spell Trouble trouble for our agents?
Okay, and what were the responses?
60% said that, yes, the dude is bad news. And the other group said that it's only bad news for wrestler. So we had one vote that said it wouldn't impact the task force at all. So don't worry about it.
One vote.
One vote.
One vote. Well, thanks for responding. Our question for next week: who will break first, Liz or Red? Who's gonna freak out? Who's gonna Ilya up? That's what I'm gonna start calling.
Who's gonna spoil that they know more than the other?
Exactly. Who's gonna? Boy, we'll come back to this. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Now, before someone guns us down in the street, let's go ahead and get into this week's case profile.
Hey guys, we will be talking about Brian Dennehy later in the show, but for any who don't listen all the way, make sure you stick around. The renowned actor did pass away this week due to natural causes, and his character Tom will be forever missed. A lot more we have to say about him, but that's for later in the show. According to press releases from the Johns, though, his arc will be completed using a mix of new and previously filmed portions. Like I said, we'll discuss him just a little bit more in a little bit.
But first, we got to talk about gun control, Aaron. What'd you think about this week?
Yeah, boy. It was a good episode. Like, I enjoyed it. It was fun to watch. It was a little preachy. I felt like a little preachy to me, but I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other. I feel like Wrestler at least held the amendment portion strong.
That's true.
You think?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I think part of the challenge with episodes like this is that you feel like there's so much in the news about this stuff. I mean, not so much these days because it's all COVID everything. But you watch that cold open and you're like, oh man, like this is powerful stuff. We're going to get like a parent trying to care for their daughter, kind of tie it into the mythology kind of concept. You know, he's going to be all pissed off because this lady was gunned down and he couldn't do anything about it. He even gets into that a little bit where he talks about some of the innocence that's died along the way. But the minute it goes into Gordon Kemp is the owner of a gun company, my whole body just changed posture, like in my seat as I heard that. And I was like, oh, it's one of those episodes. No offense to Lucas or anybody or Jonathan. It's just, I don't want to hear gun control, you know?
I think part of it is like post-election year exhaustion too. I mean, issues are already tiring. And we've heard this conversation a lot already over the last couple of years. It's just at some point, you know, maybe it's because we're COVIDed out. So like anything that makes us think about the negativity we had before the COVID, we're just like, trigger. So I didn't think it was bad at all. I mean, like, I think it's an enjoyable episode. I just feel like the topic was a little on the nose for me personally.
Yeah. It's something I didn't want to watch. I wanted to be more entertained in the quarantine states.
Yeah. Well, you know what I was kind of thinking, and I know you shouldn't Monday morning quarterback a TV show and just base it on what we saw. But
isn't that our job? That's like the whole purpose of the podcast.
I was really hoping for an episode where the kid got away and the whole episode was him trying to chase down this punk, just because like he's using one of his blacklists to get to this lowlife who just did something stupid and maybe come to terms with how that connects to his own place in the criminal sphere. I thought that could have been a really interesting angle. And going after the guy, I mean, yeah, the guy's kind of a douchebag, but I don't really know if he belongs in the blacklist, the actual owner of the gun company. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like that angle, actually, Aaron, because you could have the whole, like, I've been on this, and some of the lines would still work. Like, I've been at this for so long. There's been so many innocent deaths, and he tries to reform the kid. I mean, that would have been a kind of an interesting angle, I suppose. Yeah.
That's what I was really excited for. I'm like, oh, this will be cool. Because, I mean, as soon as the girl starts getting really excited about college and starts talking about it, I'm like, oh, she's so dead. Yeah, she's going to die soon. I mean, they're in a convenience store. It just feels like this is the environment where she gets shot. And once you see the kid, and he seems like a fairly, innocent or confusing kid. Okay. And then when he said he's going to go for the guy behind the kid, and I'm like, oh, there's a guy pulling his strings. He's the blacklister. And then it led to the gun company. And I'm like, oh, we're going there. Okay, dokie. Well, we opened in a convenience store with Red and Dembe all dressed up for a Cher concert, talking to Glenn, needing some ice, and apparently the cheapest champagne they could find. The clerk is a young woman who's learned that she's been accepted into college. Things look great. Like I said, she's going to die. This young douchebag robs the store and guns the clerk down when he realizes that she calls the police, which I want to point out, take a Zamboni level of time to arrive on the scene. Red and Dembe, that was just something that I thought was funny. I'm like, are the sirens still going? Why aren't they there yet? They don't feel like they're getting any closer. I think they're just driving around the block. Red and Dembe gun him down, but now Red has a new mission. I feel like I'm making too much fun. I did enjoy the episode. I thought it was a fun episode. Just sorry.
Well, after this cold open, I'm thinking it's going to go a completely different way. Like here, Red's going to get busted somehow because, he got caught on camera. Dembe steals the DVR. And so then they're like, hey, the DVR was stolen, and we have to figure out who stole the DVR. That's where the episode is going initially.
Oh, so we had completely different thoughts then. Yeah. So street-level criminals are using the Fine Cal9 9mm handgun sold by Gordon Kemp's company. Gordon Kemp is a businessman on the list as Red uses the FBI to try to find the person selling the guns that killed the clerk that had her whole life ahead of her and left behind a grieving mother. The FBI tries to make a straw sale case against Gordon and fails due to a judge who assesses the evidence as far too light. And also a very thin amount of evidence. So, I mean, the judge wasn't wrong. I mean, the conversation, I could barely make it out. I don't see how you could really use that too effectively in court.
Well, and I think that that's a good part of the episode because you said that you're looking at it from the political science side that said he had very little stuff. I'm looking like, oh yeah, this guy likes his guns. He's going to side with the gun guy.
Very possible. Like I've talked about before, I was a criminal science and I didn't finish, never got my law degree, but whatever. I'm still studying quite a bit. And for me, whenever there's legalities involved, I'm looking very much at the legal aspects of it, which, by the way, SVU gets right a lot of the time. But as I'm watching it and I listen to that audio when we were actually at the gun show and they're trying to get him, which, yes, we know he was complicit because we heard the clarified version. But when you listen to the recording portion, it's very muddled. I think any good criminal defense attorney could tear that up. So, I mean, I get where the judge is coming from. It's like, if we're going to go forward and envelop this huge publicity stain, we need to have enough evidence. And it wasn't clear cut.
Yeah, and the whole concept of you have to have enough evidence to even see if you can win before you can even bring the case. So that was a very interesting angle in the law process. So that the FBI can't even bring the case unless they know they can win the case.
Well, I mean, you can convene a grand jury to assess the charges. That normally happens. This is done on a more private basis, probably because he's rich and he can arrange that. And the FBI is willing to work with him because he's rich and he's powerful. And that's, what happens when you're rich and powerful.
Sure.
You can get a private session with a judge. Typically, it's done in a more public fashion. So what happens is Red gets mad and takes matters into his own hands, playing a game of cat and mouse with Cooper and the task force. I love this angle.
Totally.
This was great.
So much fun.
Yeah, loved it. Because we're playing three-card Monty, which is a sucker's game, which he's absolutely right. Raymond Red says that. If you've ever seen it played, it's that game where you have 3 cards and you're trying to guess which one's the queen. That's 3-card Monty, and they did that with trucks. And Cooper actually plays Liz, tells her she's in the gun truck when she's not, and because he thinks she's going to betray them, which she does, and then she gets mad because he called her on the fact that she was going to betray them. And I thought that was a great little masterstroke of the writers there, because that was a lot of fun. And Cooper won. Red was made a fool almost, which never happens.
Right, which says a lot about Cooper and Red's relationship. I think that because we always speculated, and we had the Kuwait episode, that there was more between these two characters, and it wasn't just the special op to get him out of being captured by Sea Duke at the end of season 4. So it's like Cooper knows Red well enough that he would know that he would pick Liz, so therefore he ends up picking Wrestler. So I like that angle. To one-up Red is pretty difficult to do, and here Cooper's able to do it because of their relationship and what they know about each other in their file.
And I gotta say, I'm with Cooper on that one. Like, at some point, choose the frickin' task force or don't be on it. I don't care if that's the only way Red cooperates. It's like it gets old after a while. If I was Cooper, I'd be playing her left and right. I'm just like, you don't trust me. You just proved I shouldn't trust. It's like we've both got kids. We've all been there, right? It's like, you don't believe me. You just lied to me. But you don't believe me because you just lied to me. It's not the first time. You know what I'm saying? There's a precedent.
Were you duped?
No, actually, no. I did think that. Well, here's what I would say. I didn't believe. I actually thought, because Red ends up in the end of right so often, or the winning side so often, I actually thought that it would be in Liz's truck and he'd get the guns back and da-da-da-da. But I was hoping that he was fooled, or that Red was fooled and that Cooper was playing him. I was really hoping that, because I thought that would be a really cool way to go. And they went that way, which made me happy. What about you?
I wouldn't say I was duped per se, because I'm like, okay, the guns are there, the scene's set up, so we know that this is the one that's going to get hit. And then when they open up the door in the back, it was empty. I was like, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say, I guess in that regard, I was duped, because I was like, this is a great way to tell the story. Cooper won. I love it. This is great. This is different. This is unexpected. This is great. I mean, that's all the things that were going through my head in that moment. It was just like, yeah, good for Cooper.
Yeah.
What I was really,
it needs to happen once in a while. Red has to lose sometimes, even though he ends up winning in the end, I guess, in his own way.
But what I didn't like was the fact that they're having this conversation between Liz and Cooper about the whole situation. At that point, you got to put your badge on the desk, or at least suspend her for a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I agree.
With her being suspended from the task force and only having one place to go to Red, and then having what happens at the end of the episode happen, that puts Liz in a really interesting predicament, because then she's got nobody. Because now she's going against a guy who knows she's lying to him, and she doesn't have the task force to back her up. But
that could have been interesting. We didn't go that way, though.
Monday morning quarterbacks.
In the end, justice is served by a bullet of hot lead by the man who will stop at nothing to right all the wrongs of this world, even if so many innocents have been lost in the process. But I would argue, is this really justice? What are your thoughts on if this is actually justice or not?
VP of the company is still going to keep the company going. Doesn't take guns off the streets.
First thing I thought. Nothing's going to change.
But dude, Gordon Kemp, dude was a douche. Okay.
Yeah, but douche.
This guy was a complete ass. Not saying that I would kill somebody just because they were being a douche. That's not what I'm saying.
I mean, a lot of people are douche. You know how many people would have to eat lead if we started shooting everybody that was a douche? It's just, I don't know. I mean, I guess it does bring up the conversation about is it the gun owner that's responsible, or is it the manufacturer that's responsible for flooding the market? I don't know. I mean, people are buying them and they're providing a product and it's legal. They're not really doing anything wrong. Now, he did some wrong with a straw sale and he was advocating breaking the law to sell them. But I can't imagine that really happens very often in real life. I'm sure there's probably a case or something that they used as a reference. But overall, I don't think most CEOs would want to take a chance of that, because that would be a big stain on their company. You know, they just want to sell guns. There's plenty of people that will buy them.
That's for sure.
So I don't know. It just felt like a weird Blacklist episode, because it never really felt like a Blacklister.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to the whole concept of we talk about the mythology all the time, and how does it tie into the overall arc of everything. And I'm still trying to piece that together, right? You
talk about the mythology all the time. I'm good with bottle episodes, but go ahead.
Well, no, because the whole concept of the Blacklister was that Red has this list. And it's like a predetermined list. That's kind of how it was set up back in the first episode, right? All the names on the blacklist. I know all these people. And this guy is a random out of nowhere. Just bloop, plucked him out of thin air because of certain circumstances that occurred. So you have to try to figure out how does that tie into the overall arc of the show over 7 seasons when you think that everything is planned out because all of these names Red knew about long before the show ever started.
Well, I mean, what the list is has been speculated for a long time, but usually it's whatever it serves Red that particular week.
Serves Red's purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so music. Let's talk about the characters.
Yeah, as Cooper challenges Red about Kemp's shipment, we hear Welshly Arms' Who We Are play as we see the plan unfold and everything kind of start to come together for the 3 truck scenario. And you can hear that song over on the playlists over both Apple Music and Spotify. Just go over to the Blacklist Exposed and hit the links over there on the right-hand side.
All right, in terms of the characters and their arcs this week, Park doesn't do much. She questions people. She doesn't have nearly as much screen time as she did last week. We're supposed to believe that Reddington is emotionally invested, is something that she asks, and that's interesting after the ending we had last week where she saw point blank that he would be.
Yeah, and he would absolutely be emotionally invested one way or the other, depending on what theory camp you're in. This is still a kid being killed, in cold blood for no reason. And, and he's experienced that. He has those conversations with Dembe about the innocence. And so many have died and he's just tired of it. And so now he's at that point where he has to do something about it. So yeah, he's absolutely emotionally invested. He's triggered in some way because of this death, whether it was either senseless or the mother that was left behind or the fact that the whole life was ahead of you, but because of this one incident, then things just changed. There's a lot that ties into Red's backstory, I think, with this gunning down. So he's absolutely invested.
Ilya makes a return, and Ilya seems like he makes a departure at the same time. In an apartment, holed up, losing his mind, waving a gun around in public. There are things about this you can't possibly understand. Hint that we are all way off base. He wasn't really crazy. He was seeing a blue car outside his flat, and it was that private eye that Liz hired from, was it last week or the week before? I can't remember.
I can't remember if it was last week or the week before.
I can't remember. I think it was 2 weeks ago, but whenever she hired that PI where she jumped into the back of her car all weird like, and now, she gets tortured by board games now for her troubles. But the car was there. We get lots of Katarina flashbacks and reminders of what he went through, the torture that he went through, and what Katarina was trying to find out. Nothing new there. That was all stuff that we saw in the first half of the season. And his wife ultimately, once they find out that the car was real and Dembe snatches the PI, his wife ultimately takes him to be safe and get treatment away from Red. And you can tell Red is very not thrilled with this angle, but he understands where the wife is coming from, that she's basically like, we were fine without you, and then you brought him back into this, and now look where he is. So their whole life was ruined yet again because of Red Reddington.
It sounded like Linda said that it was it was the same apartment that Ilya was in before. It made it sound like they were in the same place. Like, wouldn't you have moved after you were abducted from your place? I would have moved to a different place.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I did like that they added post-traumatic stress disorder, like a little PTSD for what he went through. Because too often in shows like this, or movies like this, when someone is tortured like that, they're just fine like a week later. And that's just not how it works. You're mentally broken, and it takes a little while to recover from that.
Well, especially the amount of drugs he was on during the whole procedure. Like they pushed him to the limit. There's got to be some damage done there. But
take it
in theory,
to the limit,
he technically wasn't crazy. So how much damage was done?
I mean, he's still a little wacky. He's running around the street waving a gun. That's pretty nutty. But Liz basically is the reason why he's gone now.
That's right.
If you think about it. Dembe this week checks in, or what? How do you feel about Ilya? Do you think he's out of it now, or he might come back at some point?
I don't know. It seems like he's too important of a character to have introduced to then just kind of leave him to the wayside. So, I mean, it's unclear how this would have played out, right? Because 3 episodes that we won't see this season with 20 to 22. So it'd be interesting to see if he has time to come back yet this season or if he just comes back next year. I mean, Linda knows enough about Red and Ilya's relationship because it was fine until you came back into his life. So I'm sure Linda knows a little bit of the backstory. So that angle seems interesting, that could Linda do something potentially down the line also? As like recompense.
You never know. Okay, Dembe, he checks in on, he's in charge of setting up that sting on the trucks, and he finds Liz's PI in the car. That's what happens this episode with him, which is cool. You bring back a couple of little favorites there to get the truck, and then find out we were duped. Talks to Brimmley about board games like Oregon Trail and Chutes and Ladders and Scrabbles people up as a form of torture, which is how they get the information from the PI. I just thought that was weird, because whenever Brimmley's there, it's always a new kind of torture. Board games really never occurred to me, but I totally believe Chutes and Ladders would work, because that's a pretty brutally savage game.
Every single time you get up there, and then you knock the cookie jar off the fridge. Every time.
It's frustrating. That and Mousetrap. Mousetrap. That every time that stupid little trap falls down, it's like, you got me again.
He's right though. Scrabble, man, that's torture just to even sit down and pick your first 7 letters.
I remember I used to play Scrabble a lot as a kid. My mom, when I was younger, this is a weird aside, but she would have this thing where I had to learn a new word every day, and if I heard a word and I wanted to know what it meant, she would never tell me. I always had to look it up. That was her thing. Like, you have to look it up. Just because my mind, she knew how my mind works. And if I see something, I don't forget it typically. But if I hear it, I can. So, I have an eidetic memory, whatever. So once I see it, I'm good. So she would always do that. So whenever I would play Scrabble, every time without fail, I would use words that nobody had ever heard of, only because of this and what my mom made me do. So it was always a very uncomfortable game to play with people, because I would use a word they never heard of. They'd say I was cheating. And then it'd be like this whole thing where we had to get a dictionary and we had to look it up almost every time. So Scrabble is a game that is like a trigger for me. I just don't like it anymore. It was always negative. Nobody cares about this story.
I'm just glad that she didn't end up dying of dysentery at the end of this torture.
Yeah. So weird.
Oregon Trail's a board game? Really? I know it was a card game.
No. Oregon Trail is a computer game.
I know, but he said Oregon Trail, and I was like, is that a board game, Brimmley? Like, are you ever at the computer? Like, do you have a computer in there? What's going on?
No, it's one of the first, I think it's the first computer game.
Yeah.
Well, we move on to Wrestler. This is a crime problem, not a gun problem.
It's true.
It is true. It's like, do you blame the person that made the gun or the person that fired the gun? That's kind of where we're at. And apparently, Red blames the guy who fires the gun, even though he's usually the guy who's firing the gun.
Right.
So, a lot of hypocrisy going on there. Aram, he monitors the trucks from his position, doesn't do a whole lot else, but we want to point out, if you listen to our episode from last week, we had a watch party for the last episode, which is now on YouTube at our YouTube channel, The Blacklist Exposed. And we spoke to Daniel Cerrone, who's the writer of that episode, and he did confirm that Elodie is definitely in jail and she's definitely guilty. She was trying to kill her husband the first time when he got handicapped, and she did kill him the second time.
Yeah. Or at least killed him through, what's his name? The guy with the cane.
Yeah. Through like Eaton? I forget what it is. Wilbur, something like that.
Wilbur Eaton. I think that goes together, right?
Yeah, I think so. One of those names is right. All right, so we know that. Elodie is done. She's no longer in the show, and you don't have to worry about Aram skydiving or sleeping with somebody in Washington Monument anymore.
But you could have gotten married first. That way you could have gotten the $10 million after she went to jail. Just saying, bud. Come on.
Oh, that would have been cool. Marry her and then she'd still be, I think she'd get to hold the money. I don't know how that works. All right, Cooper, he rope-a-dopes Red, putting the shipment with Wrestler instead of Liz. We already said. Sweet move. And then he knows Liz will betray them. And when Liz feels, how could you? He's like, how could I? Man, back up. And then lectures Liz about her dark impulses. How did you feel about that moment? I thought that was a great moment in the show where he basically stops her like, hey, this ain't about you. This is about you.
And I think the hard part with this scene is that there's a lot of hypocrisy in this episode, right? Because there's a lot of hypocrisy going on in this conversation too. You get where Cooper's coming from and the fact that she has to pick a side. She can't pick the task force. She can't pick Red. She's always hovering in the middle. And she does have these dark tendencies. But then you have Cooper, the parent of Liz, and playing that character. At the same time, you have Cooper, the boss of Liz, playing that character. So there's no real resolution at the end of the scene, right? There's just a lecture and nobody learns anything in the end, right? She doesn't get her badge taken away. He just lets
Nobody
her
commits
going on.
to anything.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's like, I don't. The scene is great. The two of them together with the conflict is awesome, but the resolution of the scene seems like it's open ended, and I think that's a little bit challenging.
Maybe the blacklister should have been hypocrisy. Number 158.
The hypocrite.
The hypocrite. The hypocritist. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen some measure of accountability. Like he pulls her rank, she won't lead anymore in the field, or Ram is the go-to in the field or something like that because he's got field training now.
Yeah,
some kind of punishment
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think she deserves that. She's betrayed them a few too many times for Red. Speaking of Liz, tips off Reddington like we know she will, and she finds out that she's not as trusted as she was. We blur the lines so often between right and wrong, we can't see it clearly anymore.
Yeah, she's becoming Reddington more and more as she goes along.
True. And we've always said that might be a possibility down the road, right? That might be where we're headed. Okay, so Red lost so many for so long, have been innocent, and I'm sick of it. We already talked about that. Tells Frank to listen to Linda and that he needs help. Except when then Linda's like, no, we need help away from you. And he's like, whoa, maybe not listen directly to Linda. I mean, maybe just hear her. That's kind of the look his face says.
But he was able to walk away, which is good.
No, he did. Yeah, he took it like a champ. He's like, all right, I'm out. I get it. My bad. I brought him into this.
He's going to tail him anyway. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be followed. He wants Gordon's guns and tries to steal them from Cooper's protection. Said he'll even dump them in the bay. So I just don't get the concept here. It's like he'll just make more and ship those. What is the goal here? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish? Just to send a message? I mean, I don't know, man. And then I feel like that's just such a weird. It's just weird for Raymond Reddington. I just don't understand the purpose here. I guess I get the gunning him down, but first he holds Gordon Kemp at gunpoint in his condo because his plan went awry. So he couldn't take his guns. So the other option is I kill him. So I guess Cooper, in a way, accounted for his death. I feel like that just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, yeah, the guy's a douche, but you didn't affect any change whatsoever to that company. You just punished the guy who really had nothing to do with this girl's death.
And see, this is where Aaron is trying to apply logic to a TV show.
Well, I get that. I'm just saying, like, you didn't, like, normally when Red does something like this, I can get behind him like, okay, all right, I get where he's coming from. Like, I get the judge, jury, and executioner. I don't have to deal with your laws. I love the speech. I thought the monologue was great. It's just like, but at the end of the day, you didn't change or do anything. Literally, that company is not going to change one iota.
I don't think it was
because it wasn't really operating too far outside of the field. The guy maybe he broke a law there, but is it he deserved to die for it law? No, I don't think so.
Well, remember, Red says he only killed people that deserved it. And this guy was kind of a dick. I mean,
there's a lot of dicks out there, Troy. They don't deserve to get shot in the face. I mean,
in the chest.
Here's what I would have liked. I would have liked if he would have threatened him or something and then told him, you do this again, I'm coming back here. Like, give him some warning or something along those lines, because that would have been the more reasonable thing to do. Even for Red Reddington, it would have made more sense. I just feel like this was a stretch for him.
That's why I feel like there has to be a deeper meaning to the episode than just the gun control angle. And that it's tied back to why was he so affected by this kid's death that he would go and kill this guy and not really enact any real change at the end of the day. This was a 100% revenge play. And so there has to be something bigger that we're not seeing or tying back to the mythology, in my opinion, because that's the way that this episode makes sense for the show, other than just to be a political statement. There's got to be more to it tied into, future's ruined because of other people. You can't become who you are because other people block your path or whatever. There's got to be a deeper meaning to it. And having just watched it, we're kind of just sitting on it and going, what is that deeper meaning? So maybe on a rewatch you can pick out the ties potentially.
I've rewatched it. I haven't seen anything that I wouldn't have already seen. I mean, unless it's something down the road, which that's not fair. I mean, I gotta base it on what I just saw. What I just saw just didn't feel like a Blacklist. Like I didn't feel like a Blacklister, really, to me.
Right.
Sorry. All right. Well, we do find out we got a cool reveal at the end. Although I want to point out once again, I did love that monologue with the guy. If it would have been a different Blacklister, I think that would have been fantastic. It just feel like I don't get why you killed the guy, but whatever.
Yeah, it's like there's like pieces. There's like pieces that are here that make it a really great episode and make it feel like the Blacklist. But then it's like the purpose of it or the story of it for some reason just makes it kind of fall a little flat at the end.
Yeah. We find out that Dembe and Brimmley tortured this woman enough to get the information, to get the deets that Liz hired that PAI to find Ilya. And we're back to this dance again. Now,
this is a different dance, though.
Well,
because this is
had this dance before. No, this isn't really new.
No, because this is Liz has information that Red doesn't have, but now Red also has information that Liz doesn't have. And so I think there's a little bit more of a chess match in this.
What information does Liz have that Red doesn't have?
Katarina's alive.
Oh, well, yeah, that part, I guess, is true. But you're back to the they don't trust each other again thing.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
For sure.
And that's a dance we've done before. That's what fans are saying anyway. That okay, so we're back to the she doesn't trust him, he doesn't trust her, but yet she was willing to betray the task force for him. So she obviously still has loyalty to him. Where do you stand with this whole?
No. She doesn't have that necessarily, because there was a couple lines in here where Cooper was like, Liz is also upset about the gun situation, or maybe Ressler said it. I can't remember exactly. So I think Liz was more aligned in this situation because she wanted the guns off the road, out of the hands of the criminals, more than she was aligned to Red. So she helped Red because it was an end to her helping get guns out of the hands of criminals versus her being aligned to Red specifically.
Well, she hasn't really gone against Red in this whole back half of the season so far. I mean, even though she knows he's not Ilya and she knows Katarina is still alive, she hasn't gone really against Red.
True.
So there hasn't really been a reason. She still has loyalty.
But there hasn't been a reason to go against him, really, in these last 3 or 4 episodes.
Well, this week it would have been the right thing.
Yeah, if this week she chooses Task Force over Red, then you know that she's going against him. But in this case, she's choosing get guns off the streets. So she made it a personal agenda to get guns off the streets versus specifically saying, I'm with you, Red. That's a different conversation. My opinion.
True story. Well, where do we go from here, you think? In terms of...
This is the first time I think that them being on all opposite sides, but having information is the most interesting time they've been on opposite sides.
I would agree with that because they do have something the other one doesn't have. Yeah.
Yeah. And just her, the whole time Cooper was talking to her about her dark impulses and just that clink of the glasses when they're drinking the wine. It's like, it's good that we're on the same side. And that look in Liz's face, I was like, oh man, that's kind of evilish looking. I like it. I like Dark Liz. Let's get Dark Liz back out.
I would like for her to play Red a little bit. That's what I would like to. And I mean, well played. Not where he's always at one step ahead.
Yeah, where she does the rope 3 steps behind Cooper. Totally.
Mm-hmm. I like that. All right, we want to take a second to say thank you to those that are supporting the show by going to Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/theblacklistgsm. Special big thanks to our honorary blacklister, Patricia. Also special shout out to our task force members, Lacey, Marilyn, Judy, and Sharon. All these people receive cool gifts from us, and you can get cool gifts as well for donating at the $20 level or higher. Do you want a cool t-shirt or coffee mug? Come on, you know you do. You don't have to stay at the $20 level forever, just a few months to get the cool gifts.
And if $20 is too steep, then come to our $5 level, which gets you early access to all the special episodes and interviews before anyone else, like our latest edition, Mr. James Steen. Thanks so much for joining the Special Agent Troop. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/theblacklistgsm. Click the $sign in your podcast app or the link in the show notes to fill the fedora, get some awesome rewards for yourself, and stay tuned. We'll have much more show coming up right after this.
What if you could live your life without limits, where every desire you ever imagined could be fulfilled? Experience Westworld, a show where every human's dark side will be revealed. After watching each episode, listen to Beyond Westworld, a podcast featuring humans and hosts from around the park, diving deep into HBO's illustrative narrative. Every hero has a code, and so do you. Download your itinerary and the show at BeyondWestworldPodcast.com or your podcast app of choice.
Hey, Dembe loyals, this is Hisham Tawfiq. You are listening to Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
Welcome to Red's Rhetoric, that part of the show where we feature 2 of Red scenes from the show, and we then let you guys vote over on our website, which is your favorite, at theblacklistexposed.com. Our first clip this week comes when Red and Cooper go head-to-head.
You heard Judge Barnes dismiss the case against Kemp?
Yes, Elizabeth brought me up to speed.
Then I assume she also mentioned Kemp's next shipment?
She did.
I know Agent Keene is frustrated. We all are. But the law says Kemp can ship those guns.
How did Dickens put it? If the law says that, then the law is an ass.
I want your word that you won't interfere with that transport.
Frankly, Harold, the thought hadn't even occurred to me. But now that you mention it, that sounds like a rather splendid idea.
Listen to me. I know we've looked the other way or even helped blur the lines from time to time in the interest of justice. But going after a legal shipment because you personally believe it deserves to be stopped is over the line. And I won't allow it.
Well, how are you going to do that? By sending me to my room without supper?
By stopping you.
Our second clip this week comes when Red questions Gordon.
You know, for my entire professional life, I've been a fervent and faithful supporter of gun manufacturers. These people take great pride in their history and exquisite craftsmanship. The guns they make are the tools of my trade. In the right hands, that's exactly what they are. A proper tool for sport, protection, order. In the wrong hands, the hands you put your guns in, they subvert order, tearing communities apart, ruining lives, resulting in tragedy.
You're Raymond Reddington.
I've lost so many friends to gun violence. Dear friends.
Not because of me, not because of anything I did.
Yes, of course, you dot the I's, cross the T's. And in your world, those rules protect you. But in my world, there are no laws to hide behind. You can act in bad faith as long as you're willing to face the consequences.
What consequences?
The wrath of men like me. I object to what you're doing, and I don't need to convince any court to agree with me. In my world, if I think you're guilty, I just execute sentence.
Which was your favorite? If you take a personal stance against guns, vote #RedLaw. Or if you can no longer be a faithful supporter of guns, vote #RedTools. All right, Special Agent Intel. No witty comments or theories this time around, as there is only one special agent that we can talk about this week, and that, of course, is Brian Dennehy. Forever a special agent in our books. In a world filled with fear and panic over COVID-19, Brian died of natural causes and not from the deadly disease. A fine actor for many of our generation with roles in First Blood, To Catch a Killer, Silverado, Cocoon, FX, Tommy Boy, just to name a few, and countless TV series appearances. Dennehy won 2 Tony Awards, a Golden Globe, and was nominated for 6 Emmys. He was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame in 2010. Brian gave us a character on the Blacklist that said so much in the small portion of episodes we had the pleasure of witnessing. Dom was a character with so much depth and connection to Raymond, and the source of one of the most debated episodes on the series in Rosviet. We thank Brian for his contribution to the show we all love, and know that we as fans of his our entire lives, Aaron's and I's at least, he and his craft will be missed. Our condolences to his family and the extended family he touched with his time on the Blacklist.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan of Brian Dennehy most of my life, and I don't mean just because he's on the Blacklist. Like, the first time I heard he was going to be on the Blacklist, I got super stoked. I'm like, Brian Dennehy? Yes! This show is legit! I mean, he was... If you've ever seen an interview with him, there was a long period of time, especially during the 80s, where he referenced how he was always losing jobs to Gene Hackman. Like, that was his big nemesis in Hollywood. Because if you go watch their acting styles, they are very, very similar in many ways. They could both play evil sons of bitches, but inject humanity into those characters. They could play wonderful people with an edge. You know, I mean, they really covered the base. I mean, Brian Dennehy could play a grandfather. He could play a hitman. He could play just about anything you could think of. He just had that Irish rascal in him. And he also just had a look that could just tear right through you, man. Like, he could look at you and through the screen, and there would be at least a portion of you that was frightened sitting at home. Like, he could really terrify you from afar. And he could also charm the pants out of you. Once he smiled, you're like, oh, man. Do you remember the first time you fell in love with Brian Dennehy?
I mean, you see him, you know, in First Blood, and he's the guy that puts, you know, Rambo away and everything. And then you get this sense of him being such a good guy. And then you do like other things that he's worked in. And then you just, oh my gosh, he's such a great bad guy too. And to have that depth of character is just amazing. But the scene that always like sticks in my mind for some reason, I don't know if it's like, because I felt like he's winking at you, but he's not winking at you, is in Cocoon, when he kind of pulls the eyelid down to show you that he's not really human.
Oh yeah.
Like that scene for some reason is always stuck in my head. Like I can see you and I can see into your soul. It's really what I felt like when I saw that scene in Cocoon. And I just, you know, and there's happiness and go luck, you know, in Tommy Boy, man, it's just, when his name showed up for being on this show, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. How did they get Brian Dennehy to be on the Blacklist? And then you go back and look at how much television he's actually done over the years. I mean, just a huge character actor all the way around, what he can bring to the screen and what he can do for just even a small part. It just totally lights up the place. And then to have the stage career that he had too in the theater. I mean, just amazing to have such great work over these 81 years that he was alive, and the fact that we spent, you know, 40 some plus of hours watching him do his craft. Just, yeah, it's a loss for sure.
Yeah. And he did a lot of theater work because he couldn't get parts that he wanted in Hollywood, and he wanted to expand. He wanted to act. He wanted to evolve, and those roles weren't coming in Hollywood. So he went to the stage, and that's where he could do that. That's where a lot of actors, especially character actors, find that they can take a lot of leading parts, and they can take parts that they normally wouldn't get. I think he did Death of a Salesman in Chicago. That was just brilliantly received. There are so many things that he has done, but most importantly, I remember watching First Blood. First Blood is one of my favorite movies of all time. You know, I talk about I do Stallone all the time. I love Sylvester Stallone, but I remember watching that movie, and as you watch it, you know, your initial reaction to Brian Dennehy as the sheriff is that he is a complete dick, and he is definitely the villain. He is the worst kind of man, right? But as you watch it, and you realize, you know, his deputies abused Rambo, and that's why Rambo went and slipped into his PT. And the first movie is a brilliant film. It's not what the movies later became, which are still fun, but they're not as smart as First Blood is. And his deputies really pushed Rambo over the edge because Teasel was just trying to protect his town in a way. But you come to find out, like, he's not such a bad guy. And a lot of that is because of Dennehy's performance. You know, he gives a speech where he's telling his men, hey, if a prisoner has a problem with my deputies, they come to me because I'm the law. I deal with them and I kick their ass. That's not the prisoner's job to take it on themselves. That makes them more of a criminal. And it's a great speech because it's delivered by Brian Dennehy. He's just one of those actors who could do that. He snapped me out of believing this guy was a villain into believing this guy meant well. He just should have probably went another way with it. You know, he made a mistake. He was human. He was flawed. And there were so many other roles that he did. Bestseller is a good film. FX, and not necessarily FX too, but FX was a really, really good movie. And Brian Dennehy was great in it. He did so many things. Silverado, my God, he was so good in Silverado. I could go on and on about Brian Dennehy because I grew up with him. And there were so many times where I would watch a movie later in life as I got older and think this would be better. That character would be great if Brian Dennehy played him. This character would be great if it was Brian Dennehy. And, you know, as I got older, he also faded out and he got less parts and whatnot. And I'm sure that was a struggle for him because he's said many times that the older he gets, the less roles there are for him. But man, it was so great to be doing this podcast. And then he came on to the Blacklist, and it's like just rediscovering one of my favorite character actors was just magical. Just magical.
And it does sound like 719 is where we're going to see Brian come up one last time. So I know they're hard at work trying to get 17 across the goal line. So I'm really
19,
excited.
19.
Yeah, 719.
You just said 17.
Oh, sorry. 719. And I just want to, I'm excited to see what they're going to put together to give him a good send-off. And there'll be a card, I'm sure, at the end of that episode when it's all said and done.
Yeah, they didn't have enough time, is what I read for this particular episode. But I want to leave you with a quote from Brian Dennehy himself. He said, "What really matters is that you do what you think is right, what you believe in, and you surround yourself with the people you care about in this world. That's what counts in this life." Those are great parting words. And that's going to conclude this episode. 6 seasons are on Netflix, and now's the time to recommend The Blacklist to your friend, your enemy, or your neighbor. And when you do, please also recommend they listen and subscribe to the Blacklist Exposed podcast. All the case profiles can be found at theblacklistexposed.com and everywhere great podcasts can be found. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to watch Rasfiet this weekend.
Absolutely. For more great Aaron and Troy hijinks, follow us on your favorite social media outlet. I'm at Troy Heinrichs. He's at Aaron Smirks. Together we are at The Blacklist GSM. And don't forget, Westworld's still got 3 episodes to go this season. So make sure you follow at Westworld Fans on Twitter as well. And join us at Beyond Westworld over there on Facebook. Just search for the group and join 30,000 people that are talking about robots and all kinds of fun stuff. And Aaron and I talking about it every single week on Mondays. So you can go ahead, subscribe to BeyondWestworldPodcast.com as well.
Big thanks for listening. Don't forget to answer our profiling question. Who's going to break first, Liz or Red? Take care, guys.
See ya.
God bless, Brian.
Until next time, I'm Agent Troy Heinrichs. That's at Troy Heinrichs on Twitter. And if you want to learn more about me, just visit, about.me/Troy Heinrichs.
And I'm Agent Aaron Peterson. You can hear me talking about movies and TV on the Hollywood Outsider podcast, as well as Remake This Movie Right. We are available at thehollywoodoutsider.com or on Twitter at 5popcorn. Be sure to subscribe, download the app, submit your feedback, but most importantly, keep yourself off of the Blacklist.
The Blacklist Exposed is a Golden Spiral Media production. Find more of our great podcasts at goldenspiralmedia.com/podcasts.